Hey guys, and welcome to game number 8 out of 100 of the Mack vs. Machine series, where I'll be playing 100 games of Scrabble against the top Scrabble playing bot, HastyBot. Now, we got off to a very strong start in the series. We started off 6-0, but we did finally lose a game in game 7, so hopefully we can get back on the winning train here in game 8. Okay, so we're going to be first in game 8, and we have a pretty strong rack to start things off. A lot of good bingo tiles. A, E, R, S, M are all very strong. Unfortunately, I don't believe there are any playable 7s here. We're close to something like Amberries, but we need another I. So I'm feeling like we could play off a bunch of tiles with Bream for 24, but I feel like A, E, M, R, S is a strong enough leave. It's worth playing something like Ba or Ab. It is a pretty big sacrifice. It's 16-point sacrifice, but we do give back a lot less, and our bingo percentage is so strong with this leave that I think it's probably worth it to play short here. As for Ba versus Ab, I'm not really sure it matters all that much. I'll probably go with Ab just because it takes an A and an S, whereas Ba takes an O in front and we don't have the O. That's like an extremely marginal difference, but since I have to choose between the two and they're otherwise more or less identical, I'm going to go ahead and play Ab. Okay, so he plays Vane, and unfortunately I don't think we've drawn any playable bingos here. We'd have Neuromas or Enamers through this end, but Abe is not valid, so we can't play Enamers. And now the question is, how do we proceed? I'd again love to get rid of an O and a U. We can't really do that. I don't think exchanging 2 is a great idea here. There's also now not a lot of good places to bingo since Vane doesn't take an S. Maybe Our here. That's not bad because AEMS is still a very strong leave, and we give ourselves actually 2 more spots to bingo to an S. We have Ours and Bio. So this is what we'd call forking the board. It creates 2 different lanes at the same time, and it's going to be pretty difficult for him to block both of them with a single play. So that's a cool idea. I don't really see anything great through this N with ABBA. We could play Moan, but ERUS isn't as strong a leave. The U really puts a damper on it, and I kind of like this just to give us 2 good bingo lines. With Moan, it's pretty easy for him to just play under it, and I'm not sure where we'll be able to bingo next turn. So I feel like, tactically speaking, Our is a little bit stronger. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so he plays Biotron, which is kind of an odd play. It only scores 10 points. It does open a lot up. We have Age Mates and Agamates through a T, which unfortunately isn't going to fit here. I don't think there's anything through the R, the O, or the N, unfortunately. We don't have anything great with Biotrons that I see. I think the best we'd have would be something like Games, which almost certainly doesn't score enough to justify. Yeah, only 34 and keeps AE, which isn't particularly great. So I'm probably going to end up playing something like a G over here to score 26 and keep the S. I do block our Biotron's hook, but we also do still have ours. And there's a decent chance he actually has an S2 after Biotron. It's a very aggressive play. If it was against a human, I would be maybe not almost certain, but very confident that they had an S. Against HastyBot, I'm less confident since he usually just goes with the highest equity play. But there's still a decent chance he did keep an S here. So I don't mind blocking the heavy hitting hook and then trying to keep the other S hook for us to bingo with next turn. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. Okay, so he plays Wharfing, which was not a bingo. It was a nice play, though, to dump a bunch of his high point tiles through the AR. And we've got a little bit of a clunky rack here now. We drew 2 Ds, a U, some other things that we didn't really want. We almost have a addendums through this EN, but we actually need another D for that, so that's not going to work. Maybe dadgum through this G. That's actually a cool play. It scores well. It scores 26 and keeps NS, which is, of course, a very strong leave. So that is probably as good as we're going to do here. I almost certainly can't imagine we'll be scoring more. So I think let's go ahead and play that. Okay, so he plays U. And let's see, we do have unlooses, and we have unloosens actually as a 9, which I think is going to score more. I obviously don't love leaving this massive hotspot he just opened with the triple on the bottom, but I think we don't have a choice. And yeah, unloosens is 70. Oh, that's 76. Yeah, that's definitely more than unlooses. So I think that's going to be the play. Yeah, and as I figured, he did hit this spot for a lot of points, for 61. And I would have loved to do something about it, but I just couldn't afford to not bingo there when I had that available. So, okay, we've got, I guess, about an even game after all that. Kind of a strange start to this game. Like, I kept being close to a bingo, and I got the sense he maybe was a little bit too for a moment, but just couldn't quite connect until that last rack. I'm seeing Chiton here, which scores pretty well. It's 28. CT is a good leave. Also, really doesn't give much back. His scoring opportunities and certainly his bingo opportunities are actually quite slim after this play. Like, to bingo, he'd almost have to bingo to this O or this U. Like, I don't even know where else a bingo could fit. I mean, he could end in a B, hooking the AA, but that's extremely unlikely. This is also really good for our leave and just equity in general, so it looks quite strong to me. I'm going to go ahead and play it. Okay, so he plays Isle, and we have a nice rack here. We have typical as a 7 with an I, or ectypal with an E. Neither of them are going to play. There's Calypter, Calyptra, Eucalypt. There's a lot of cool 8s here. But as I was saying before, I think the only places to bingo on this board are to one of these letters in Ousel, this O or this U, or hooking BAA. And I don't think we're going to be able to bingo to this O. So I think probably just try to score in the corner here. Maybe Paya? It's 34 points. That's a lot. It's hard to fault taking 34 points on this kind of a board and keeping the blank. There's really no reason to be aggressive here, even if we have the blank. We have a nice lead, and I'd rather wait for him to open something up, and then we can hopefully capitalize. Piley is another pretty good option here too, hooking Lyle. It scores a few less, but it does keep a vowel, which is nice just to ensure our rack is a little more balanced next turn. So it's a pretty close call, I think. One thing I do like about Paya is we save this C for MYC, so there's a decent possibility of us getting maybe like Loci LOCI there at a later turn for a nice score. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to use because we'd pretty much have to hook a U on up to make Upo. I guess Oko would work too. I think it's worth it though. Let's go ahead and play Paya. Okay, so he went ahead and played Phi. I'm still not really inclined to open this board. I have a lead, I have a blank, and it's almost impossible to bingo, and I should be able to hold on if somehow neither of us bingo for the rest of this game. So I'm still not inclined to open anything. So I'm thinking maybe just ill now to get rid of a few of our L's, clean up our rack. I guess I do give back this L as a potential bingo line. But that's also not that easy to hit. And if he does bingo to this L, he'll give me back some floaters that I'll be able to use pretty easily. I'm also looking at plays like Rill that set up the T, but unfortunately they also set up his potential Ds and Ts, so that's certainly not playable. I think I like Ill here. Till is also not doable because of the S hook. Yeah, this looks quite strong here. I'm going to go ahead and play that. Okay, so he has played above my last play of ill, and he did create an opening here above the 08. So if we can find a word ending in an O or a D, then we should be able to bingo for quite a lot. And we do have costard, so I'm going to go ahead and play that. And now we have a pretty commanding lead in this game. We're up 86 on a board that still doesn't have all that many bingo opportunities, and he certainly didn't help his cause there with XI. There is the potential for 7s overlapping to make OXO and then putting another tile next to SI. But there's no O's left. There's only a blank. So he'd have to spend his blank to make it an O, which is not easy to do. We almost have bear-like through this L, but unfortunately the L is in the wrong spot. So what I want to try to do here pretty much is just keep things tight and try to, if I can, extend my lead even more so that if somehow he were to hit an unlikely bingo, I should still be able to outrun. There really aren't any places for me to score, though. This board is quite bereft of any real opportunities. I almost think something like Q here, as lame as it looks, might be my best bet. I mean, it only scores 14, but I don't think I can really score any more than that. I guess I do have this BAA hook. I could play Cobb here. But, I mean, I also don't love keeping EEIR. There's so many E's unseen that I think KUE is a little bit better. I guess Cobb does block this L, but it's still pretty unlikely he's going to hit that L. I think I'd rather just clean up my rack here. Cobb also gives him some good opportunities to play to the left here and open the board anyway. So in the short term, maybe it gets rid of the L, but in the long run, it actually is probably better for him. So I'm going to go ahead and play Q, I think. It's not a very exciting play by any means, but I think it's perfectly okay here. Okay, so he just drops an E here to make Millet and EW. So he's pretty clearly fishing, and he's close to a bingo. Now, HastyBot I know plays a lot for equity, and even though there's not a lot of places to bingo, he'll fish, which probably isn't a good move strategically. I don't want to, of course, jump to that conclusion without seeing his rack, which we'll look at after the game. But in any case, I'm definitely going to infer he kept a very strong lead with this play, so I'd now very much like to close down any of the remaining bingo lanes, probably the best one of which is this L. So I'm going to go ahead and drop down EN here just to close that down, and this should, I think, pretty well secure the game. Yeah, see, now he's just fishing again, so he plays Ag in the corner. He's probably keeping, like, Satire or something like that. But unless he makes his blank an O with OXO or bingos to this O or this U, there's really nowhere for him to bingo. I can't really block this spot, I don't think, this OXO spot, without giving something else back. Like, I can't play Sib because there's an S, and that would give him that hook. I'm up enough points, though, that even if he bingos there, I should be perfectly fine to just outrun. I do want to be a little bit mindful, though, of the Q. So I might just drop a B, to be honest. That way, too, if I draw the Q, I'm saving Cade for myself here in the bottom. Because the only way I'm going to lose this game at this point is if he bingos and I get Q stuck. If he bingos and it's a normal endgame, I should easily be able to hold on. So I think I'm just going to kind of lay low here and kind of play off one or two tiles at a time, trying to avoid the Q, and also ensuring that if I do draw the Q, I'll have a good place to play it. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this. Yep, and then he just plays 8. I have to watch my time, guys. I'm down to under a minute. But I think I'm just going to kind of stick with my plan here and kind of not really open anything. And I should be able to just hold on. So let's, I don't even know. I want to keep Cade. So, how about, actually I'll just play Goad, I think. It scores a lot of points. And I should be able to play QI somewhere if he bingos, so I'm going to do that. Okay, I did draw the Q. He plays Oxter. Now I'm just going to play Cot in order to not empty the bag. And this should be... Okay, he didn't even... Oh, and we drew the blank. Wow, that's a bit of an excess of luck. And I'm going to just bingo out with Tryptane over here. I don't think there's anything better. And I don't have time to find it if there is. So, okay, an unexpected gift there with the blank at the end. This turned into, I guess, a bit of a bagging, given that draw and also the draw of Costard. But it was kind of a strange game to start, very passive, and it turned into a very closed board on the right-hand side. There were a few positions I do want to look at, but I think after I bingoed with Costard, it sort of just became a pretty straightforward win. But let's see early in the game what maybe we could have done. So yeah, there is a beam in addition to Bream. I probably would have gone with Bream if I did go with either of these, just to set up the S hook, since a beam doesn't take the S. He also likes Bam, but the M definitely helps my bingo percentage considerably, and it'll also help any of my bingos score more. So if I'm going to play short, I definitely prefer Ab to Bam. I don't hate a beam or Bream, but in general, if I have that strong a bingo lead early on in the game, I do really like bingoing first if I can, and I'd rather, in general, play short, but I wouldn't really fault someone for playing a beam or Bream here. It's probably mostly a stylistic choice. I would think most top players would probably play short, but I definitely wouldn't call either of the longer plays a mistake. Yeah, Hour looks fine here. Moan was the main other play I considered. Not really much merit to exchanging, just because there all of a sudden really aren't any good places to bingo. Obi is an option. It does hit a lot. Like, it hits with an E for measure, an I for Uremias and Mauzier, for instance. So there is some merit to this, but it's also pretty easily blocked. Like, he'll often play under it, or maybe hooking Abba and playing across, and I'm just not really sure you'll actually get bingos down that often. Whereas with Hour, like we were discussing in the game, you're forking the board and you're getting 2 bingo lanes for a single play, and I just think this is going to ultimately give us the best chance to get a bingo down. Yeah, Biotron is a strange play by the bot here. I'm not really sure what to make of this. He obviously doesn't have a lot of good options. And this is one other benefit of Hour. If he doesn't have an S, then his life is all of a sudden made really difficult. Biotron just, to me, seems a little reckless. Like, what are you accomplishing? I mean, you're only scoring 10. You're keeping FIN, which isn't a good leave. And you're giving back so much after a pretty short play of Hour, which signals likely a reasonably strong leave. So I don't like this. Granted, his other options here are all pretty gross. Riff is disgusting. NNORT is a terrible leave, and you're just giving back a free easy bingo line. I would actually probably exchange here, but I don't think this is the way to go, because on this board, normally intro is a strong leave for bingo percentage, but if you look at this board, you really need an S to make things happen. So I would, as crazy as it sounds, like, you could actually consider exchanging 7 here. Maybe exchange like 4 or 5 just to keep some balance on your rack for some security. Like, maybe keep IN or something like that. But I wouldn't exchange 2, just because you're not really giving yourself any chance to pull one of the tiles you'll need to make something happen here. I would much rather turn over some more tiles. A G is actually a good tile too for Biog if you can draw it. So I think I would keep IN, because that way also if you do draw the G, you'll have a nice ING possibility hooking Biog. Yeah, I would exchange 5 here, keeping IN. And I know it looks weird. It's certainly well down on the equity list. But again, just on this board, without some specific tiles, especially an S and maybe a G, you're just really accomplishing nothing. So yeah, I definitely am not a fan of Biotron here. Agi looks good. We looked at games briefly during the game, but it's definitely not worth it. You're only getting 8 more points. AE is a little bit too Val heavy, and Agi is just much stronger. Wharfing is a nice play by him, very clearly best. Yeah, Dadgum looks good here. Fad is an option, but DMNSTU is kind of clunky and definitely too consonant heavy, so I like Dadgum. There is a marginal chance, of course, of him hitting an X-bomb at the bottom here with Axe both ways and scoring 50, but I could also draw the X. It's not by no means a guarantee that he did, and at least if he does do that, he'll probably give me back something on the triple row on the bottom, so that's a risk I'm worth taking. He plays U. This gives back a lot. It's kind of a scary play to make. U here is a little bit less scary just because now I don't have the ability to also overlap the Y. But I would probably go with Weenie here. The game is pretty close to even. He's going to be taking a small lead. I don't see a good reason to give such a strong spot back. It's so easy for me to score 40, 50 points, even 60 if I have the right rack. And if you play Weenie, I mean, you're still going up 20 or so. You've got the Z. You've got a little bit of a Val-heavy leave, but definitely a leave with a lot of potential. Also, maybe you could try to draw some Z plays in the corner here from 0-1 down. It just looks a lot sounder to me, so that's what I would have played. Yeah, here I really don't have a choice. I've got a bingo. I can't be giving up 40 points to take away this spot. And he does capitalize. He gets Ousel down, which is clearly the correct play. Chiton looks good. I didn't actually see Cochin in the game, or I think it's Cochin actually. I'm pretty sure it's French for chicken, but I may be wrong about that. Once again, my French-speaking fellow Scrabble friends will definitely have something to say about it if I butchered that pronunciation. But yeah, Chiton looks fine just to unduplicate the T's. CT is a bit better than TT for sure. Just give myself a little more scoring potential for the next turn. Let's see. He played Isle, which looks okay. I think either of these are fine. It's already starting to be very locked down at this position though, and he's got to be thinking about that, right? He's keeping a good leave, but even so, there's not going to be anywhere for him to bingo pretty much after any of these plays, and that's probably fine for him at this point because he's not going to be down much. It'll be basically an even game. I'll have a tempo, so I'm fine with this for now, keeping a strong leave and just kind of seeing what I do. And he doesn't need to be aggressive here because he's not at a point where he feels like he needs to bingo to come back into this game. So I think Isle is reasonable here. I don't see anything else that looks particularly exciting. I guess it is worth mentioning, maybe Say is a little bit, well, I was going to say Say is maybe a little bit better to take away this spot that I used, since he also keeps an E to maybe hit a use play next turn, like blank ETS. I think this is kind of interesting. Of course, at the same time, there's a lot of E's left, and there's plenty of things I could have, like Pend or Fend would really hurt. So it's kind of a trade-off here. If there weren't so many E's, I think this would be very strong. But a play like, if I play something like Pend, or even Rend is going to be almost 40, and that's really going to hurt in this position. So it's a much riskier play. I guess the good news for him is I kind of would have to have like a D or a T to make a play there because there's no S's left. I guess an N is possible, but then there's not that much that hooks ME either. Like, probably blank END or ENT are the main things that's actually going to go with that pull. And that's not all that likely. Because, like, ME doesn't take an E, so he can't really play anything with EED or EET. He'd pretty much have to play END or ENT, or maybe ELD with Mel. And that's not that likely, whereas you're keeping EST right there. So you'll have a great chance to score a lot with maybe Fest or Pest or Vest next turn if you can draw it, even Jest. Yeah, I'm actually starting to think Say is a little bit better here just because of the strong upside. It's not actually all that likely that I'm going to have a big play. So I think I would have gone with Say, but I definitely don't hate Isle either. Yeah, Pile looks good, especially since I have the C for potential overlaps here. I don't think it's warranted to sacrifice the 11 points. I'm not going to be bingoing next turn anyway, so I'd rather just score more. And this is a nice spot for him to to drop for like 30 points too if he has like a PE or M or something like that. So I think this looks good. Phi, yeah, I guess he's starting to fall behind a bit, which I don't like. And I mean, he's keeping these good bingo leaves, but with nowhere to bingo, I might go for something like Thief here. I think it might be time now for him to be a bit more proactive, because I mean, he's sort of, I feel like, starting to commit himself in a way to dying a slow death, for lack of a better term, after Phi. Because now he's going to be down about 30 in a tempo, and if I just keep things close, if he doesn't make an opening at some point, I'm just going to grind it out on a closed board and win. And Thief seems like a good time to make an opening. He's keeping a strong leave. The E works really well with the MIS leave. And it's a little bit of a risk giving me back that E, but it's not like a huge risk where I can very easily just score a ton of points. Of course, it's not that hard for me to block, but also if I do block, I might be sacrificing a lot. This scores a bit more too. It gets him within like 15, so I think I would go for Thief here. But I don't hate Phi. He's still not down that much. It's not quite desperation mode. Let's see. I think I missed Lilt here. I only considered Ill and Till. Lilt is maybe a little bit better just to score one more point. And also get rid of an extra vowel. There's still a lot of T's left, so I don't think keeping the T is that valuable. The one thing that's kind of nice about Ill, and this isn't that big a difference, is I think the L is a little bit harder to bingo to than the T. There is one S for like EST plays, or there's also ENT is a common ending. So that's one thing in favor of Ill. But I think that's a marginal enough difference that scoring the 2 extra points and getting rid of the extra vowel would probably have been a slight improvement. So I'm going to say this is a pretty minor mistake on my part. Certainly nothing major. Yeah, and this is the problem, guys, with the way he's allowed this game to develop. Is he's getting he has like 3 or 4 sevens on this rack, but he's getting these positions where none of his bingos are going to play, and he's starting to lose the ability to open. What he needs to do here, I think, is probably play something like MU. Because now he'll be setting up a spot here for bingos with Emu that he's got a very good chance to hit next turn. And if I block, I'll probably be at least giving him back some other lane to work with. With OM, I mean it sets up a great lane, but it's probably just too easy for me to use. Although, I guess let's see. So I can hook it with a D or an N. Yeah, there's an O, but there's no S's left or F's or anything. Maybe this isn't actually that crazy, because I thought during the game it must have been way too reckless. But maybe it's okay. I mean, after Ill, I guess there's a decent enough chance that I don't have a D or an N. So maybe this is a risk that's worth taking, because sometimes even when you're down, you don't want to create huge openings like this, since that just allows your opponent to score a lot and really run away with the game more. You do need to be a little bit patient sometimes, but now that I'm realizing there aren't all that many hook letters left, and even if I do play there, of course I bingoed, which was a worst case scenario for him, but if I make a play like a 4 or a 5, I will be giving him some other tiles to work with and maybe opening up row 2. So I think I retract that. I'm fine with OM here in this position instead of MU. I'm okay with the aggression. Of course, it did backfire. Costard is what I played. Carotid is perfectly reasonable too. I don't think there's a material difference. Yeah, XI. This is starting to look very bleak for him. Tix, XI. Yeah, I hate giving up the 5 points. Tix does just leave him a little bit more room to work with, though, in terms of bingo lanes, since XI, he's going to need to draw the blank to underlap it. And there's literally nowhere left for him to bingo now on this board, unless he draws something to the L. So I think he actually does need to play Tix, just to, he creates a lane for himself next to this X, he keeps the C and the O open. He needs to bingo, like, immediately if he wants any chance of coming back into this game. He's going to need to bingo and then probably draw the blank. So I think he's got to sack the 5 points here. Either Tix, maybe even Axe. I'm not sure this hits enough to be worth it, keeping the 2 eyes. Like, I don't think it'll bingo with an E. So this is okay, though. Like, you'll hit with an N, you'll hit Citrines, you'll hit with an A, Satirize. So I don't think Axe is terrible. I think Tix is probably still a little better, though, just because it'll hit more often. Axe does also score 9 more points though, which is important when you're this far back and trying to get back in the game. So I wouldn't say Axe is wrong. I just feel like you've got to bingo immediately and prioritize maximizing that bingo percentage. So I'd probably go with Tix here. But yeah, I don't like XI at all. He just can't afford to be closing any of the already scarce lanes that he has. Yeah, Curb obviously is not something I want to do here. There's absolutely no reason for me to give him any bingo lanes, let alone 2 strong floaters and an E and an R. So I think Q is perfectly fine. Yeah, and this is sort of what I suspected, guys, during the game. He's just fishing to a really strong lead here of satire. And, I mean, this is just not going to accomplish anything. He needs to... I mean, he needs... Yes, this is what he needs to do. He needs to do something like Oxter to give himself a lane, score a couple points. He's just never winning if he plays like this. And this is what I think this position demonstrates the weakness of the bots like HastyBot. They're just very equity focused, and as a result, they don't necessarily think about strategy. Like, oh, I'm down. I'm going to need to bingo at least once, if not twice. I need to open a lane. Like, yeah, I'm keeping satire, but 95% of the time, next turn, even if I draw a bingo, it's not going to play. So that doesn't help me. And they're not really thinking like that. So that's definitely one of the weaknesses of the bots. Of course, they have perfect word knowledge, which is a huge strength, but sometimes they don't exploit that very well in terms of the strategy. Yeah, I think Oxter looks like it has to be the play here. Certainly, EW is just not really accomplishing anything for him at this point. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to do this because there's an S unseen and he could play ST bingos pretty easily. So I just dropped this to block the L and kind of keep. I'm happy. I mean, if the board stays closed, I'm up 100. I'm not going to lose. So I'm sort of just playing the cat and mouse game, waiting for him to open something, and he still doesn't. Once again, he needs to play something. Yes, this is a great play. This is a great play for him, right? It gives him an awesome lane to play an EST bingo here. I love this play. Even Oxter would be fine, but don't do this. I mean, he's just completely at this point sort of letting me execute my plan of keeping the board closed, and there's no way or no path for him to come back if he keeps playing like this. Yeah, so I'm just, once again, of course, I'm happy to see that. I'll be like, okay, I'll just play off one tile too, and I'm just keeping a good lead, waiting for him to make an opening, and he never does. Again, he should definitely play Oxter here or something like that, but he keeps it closed. I could of course score more, but there's no reason for me to keep it open, so I just keep scoring as much as I can while not giving anything back. And he finally does play Oxter, but it's quite a bit too late, especially now that he's keeping a V. I just quickly play Cot. I see there's a J and a VNC, and so I could actually lose if I were to empty the bag and not be careful with something like Cot down here. Because if I draw like J, V, and another tile, I'll have about 30 points on my rack, and if he bingos out next to Oxter using this P. Like, let's say I draw a JVT. I'll have 34 points on my rack, and Cot puts me up by 96. So 96 minus 34 would be only 62, and his bingo will easily score well more than 62. It'll be in the mid to high 70s. So I have to be careful here, not to empty the bag. And again, this is why he needs to play Oxter, right? It can potentially put me in some difficult situations. And if he had played this a lot earlier, he might have had a much better chance to come back. Of course, now that I see how many tiles are in the bag, it's pretty easy for me to just play Cot and say, okay, I'm not emptying the bag, so even if you bingo, I'll have another play in the endgame, and I should easily win. But still, he's at least making me think, whereas plays like AG and EW don't make me think at all. Yeah, at this point, the game is lost for him. I'm almost definitely going to be bingoing, and even if he fishes off a J and draws the blank. Actually, I'm guaranteed to have reprint there anyway. So yeah, this is completely lost for him at this point. And yeah, Triptane is the best bingo. I did see Nephrite. Of course, I was very low on time. I was briefly looking for possible 8s through this E and Oxter's overlapping QI that would have scored more, but there is no such play. So Triptane looks good. And yeah, and that's the game, guys. So I ended up winning pretty convincingly by a score of 481 to 331, and it was a kind of a strange game, but an interesting game. nonetheless. A very closed position early on. I feel like I played quite solidly. Maybe ill instead of lilt was a slight inaccuracy, but certainly nothing substantial. I do think HastyBot did not play very well that game. He needed to be a lot more proactive about keeping the board open. He sort of just let me execute my my closed board plan there, and he just let me keep my 100-point lead without really contending to make a comeback. So I think that again is one of the weaknesses of HastyBot. If you can get a lead against him and get the board very close, then you've got a very good chance at holding on, just because he's not great with the strategy of getting back into those games. But yeah, that was another good game, and we now improve to 7-1, so a good way to get some momentum back. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this game. As always, feel free to leave any feedback or questions or any thoughts on things I might have missed in the comment section, and we'll see you soon for Game 9. Thanks again. Have a good one.